good evening to all. Good evening to all. Today I am going to explain the structure of the heart. Structure of heart. Structure of the heart. Heart is a pumping organ, central pumping organ. Heart is central pumping organ. Organ of blood vascular system. Of blood vascular system. Blood vascular system. And it is a thick walled. It is thick walled muscular muscular and pulsating organ situated in a mediastinum, situated in mediastinum. The region in the thorax, the region in the thorax between the two lungs, it is a pear shaped, broad anteriorly and pointed apex is directed posteriorly to the left side, directed posteriorly to the left side. The heart is mesodermal in origin. The heart is mesodermal in origin. The heart is mesodermal in origin. Next, that heart is covered by pericardium. Heart is covered by pericardium. Pericardium consists of outer fibrous pericardium and inner and inner serous pericardium. Serous pericardium. Serous pericardium. Okay, and then serous pericardium is a double layered. Serous pericardium double layered. Serous pericardium is double layered, formed by an outer parietal layer, formed by an outer parietal layer, inner layer is visceral layer. Visceral layer. Inner is visceral pericardium. In between parietal and visceral layer, in between parietal and visceral layer, the space is filled with pericardial fluid. Filled with pericardial fluid. Pericardial fluid, which allows a free movement of heart. Which allows free movement of heart, which allows free movement of the heart. Next, the wall of heart consists of the wall of heart. Heart consists of three layers: epicardium, myocardium, middle is metacardium, middle is myocardium, and inner layer is and the innermost endocardium. Innermost is endocardium. Outer layer is epicardium, middle layer is myocardium, and inner layer is endocardium. Next, external structure of the heart. External structure. Heart of man is four-chambered. The heart of man is four-chambered and consists of two atria and two ventricles. Two atria and two ventricles. and separated by atria and ventricles are separated by atria and ventricles separated by a deep groove called coronary sulcus, by deep groove called coronary sinus, a deep groove called coronary sinus. Say for example, this is the atria and here is this is the right atria and here it is left atria. And right ventricle and this is the left ventricle. Left ventricle. Okay. And a small conical projection, pouch like projection from the upper part of a small a projection like this is the projection like structure. It is called auricular appendix. Auricular appendix. What is that projection like structure? Is arised from the atria. It is auricular appendix. Okay. Then two ventricles are separated by two ventricles are separated by two ventricles are separated by oblique interventricular groove. Oblique interventricular appendix. Interventricular groove or interventricular groove. Interventricular groove. Okay. Then internal structure of the heart. Internal structure of heart. Internal structures. Internal structure. So the right atria is larger than left atria. Right atria is larger than left atria, and the two atria are separated. Two atria separated by interatrial septum. interatrial septum. This is the interatrial septum. Interatrial septum. And then a small pore called foramen ovale. Here, a small pore. This small pore is called foramen ovale. Foramen ovale. That from a foramen ovale, that foramen ovale is useful for transfer of the blood from right atria to the left atria during the embryonic stage. During the embryonic stage. When the lungs are functional, when the lungs are functional, it is closed. What is that? Closed. The foramen ovale is closed. Foramen ovale is closed, and it appears like a small patch-like structure. It appears like small patch-like structure called fossa ovalis. Fossa ovalis. Patch-like or depression. Fossa. What is that? Fossa ovalis. Fossa ovalis. What is the fossa ovalis? A small patch-like structure or depression present between these two interatrial septum. A small pore-like structure is called foramen ovale. That is closed when the lungs are functional. When the lungs are functional. And right atrium is receives impure blood, or it receives the deoxygenated blood. It receives the deoxygenated blood from different parts of the body. From different parts of the body. Different parts of the body. Different parts of the body. Next, that it receives two large veins. Right atrium receives two large veins called precaval one. Second one is postcaval. pre-cava, or it is also called superior vena cava. Superior vena cava, and it is the inferior vena cava. Okay, then the blood from wall of heart is returned to right atrium. Blood from wall of the heart returned returned to right atrium, through coronary sinus, through coronary sinus, through by the coronary sinus. Then, and it's so whose opening is bound by the wall of the Tibetius, wall of Tibetius, and left atrium receives oxygenated blood from lungs. So right side of the right atrium is deoxygenated blood, left side is oxygenated blood. Okay, then through a pair of pulmonary lungs, through a pair of pulmonary veins, which open into left atrium, which open into left atrium through common pore and through left atrium through a common pore, not guided by wall, not guarded by wall, not guarded by wall. Atria and ventricles are separated by atrioventricular septum. atrioventricular septum. Right atrium opens into the right ventricle. Right atrium opens into right ventricle. Left atrium opens into left ventricle. Left ventricle. So right is right atrioventricular aperture. Right is right ventricular, right atrioventricular aperture, ventricular aperture, and left is left atrioventricular aperture. And right atrioventricular aperture ventricular aperture guarded by tricuspid wall. And left atrioventricular aperture is guarded by bicuspid wall or mitral wall. And then we can take the right and left ventricles are right and left ventricles are posterior chambers of the heart. Left ventricle is larger. Left ventricle is larger than right ventricle. Left ventricle is larger right ventricle. Right ventricle, because pumping of blood from left atria to different parts. Pumping of blood from left ventricle to different parts of the body. Different parts of the body, or different organs of the body. Then the inner side of the ventricles, first we can draw the diagram. Can draw the diagram. This is the inferior vena cava. Vena cava. And this is the superior vena cava. And this is the aorta. Left pulmonary artery. Left pulmonary artery. And here it is pulmonary veins. Pulmonary veins. And Here is pulmonary wall, and here it is the tricuspid wall, and here is the bicuspid wall or mitral wall, and aortic walls. These are aortic walls. Aortic wall, and this is right atrium. Left atrium. Right ventricle. And here is left ventricle. Okay, and right pulmonary artery. This is the right pulmonary artery, and these are the right pulmonary veins. Right pulmonary veins. Okay, then so these are this is about, and internal a small ridges internally pulmonary. ఎట్లా పోయింది? చూపించాను జువాలజీ బయాలజీ అని వస్తుంది కదా. అది బాటనీ జువాలజీ. రైట్. నెక్స్ట్ the wall of the ventricle the wall of the ventricle the wall of the ventricle is thicker ventricle is thicker. Right ventricle is thicker. The inner wall of or inner surface of ventricle, inner wall of ventricle is small ridges and conical small ridges called columna corneae and ridges and conical large ridges are large and conical and are called papillary muscles and are called papillary muscles extending between atrioventricular walls and papillary muscles. Extending between atrioventricular walls and the atrioventricular walls and papillary muscles and papillary muscles are tendon like cords or tendon like cords called chordae tendinae they prevent cuts of atrioventricular wall they prevents they prevents the cusps of ventricular walls from bulging too far into atrium. Okay, so a small ridges are called columnar cornea, and large ridges are called papillary muscles. These are papillary muscles, and from these cords, these are called chordae columnar corneae, chorda tendinae, chorda tendinae. These are called chorda tendinae. Next, aortic arches. Aortic arches. Pulmonary arch arises from the left atrial. Pulmonary arch arises from the left anterior angle of right ventricle. Left anterior angle of the right ventricle. It carries deoxygenated blood to the lungs. It carries deoxygenated blood to lungs. Blood to lungs. Deoxygenated blood to the lungs. Systemic arch arises from left ventricle. Systemic arch arises from left ventricle. Left ventricle. It carries, not left, it is a right. And supply oxygenated blood oxygenated blood to different parts of the body. To different parts of the body. To different parts of the body. Next, opening of right ventricle into pulmonary arch. Opening of right ventricle into pulmonary arch. Into pulmonary arch, and opening of left ventricle into systemic arch. Left ventricle into systemic arch and pulmonary arch. Systemic arch are respectively guarded by pulmonary wall, aortic wall. Arch guarded by guarded by pulmonary wall and aortic wall. Pulmonary wall and aortic wall. Pulmonary wall and aortic wall. Each of these wall is made up of crescent, three crescent shape. Each of these walls made up of three crescent shaped cusps. Three crescent shaped cusps. Hence they are known as semi-lunar walls. Hence they are known as semi-lunar walls. Semi-lunar walls. Hence they are known as semi-lunar walls. A fibrous strand known as a fibrous strand known as ligamentum arteriosum. Ligamentum arteriosum is present at the point of contact of systemic arch. Is present at contact of point systemic arch and pulmonary arch. It is a remnant of ductus arteriosus. It is remnant It is a remnant. It is a remnant of. It is remnant of ductus arteriosus. Ductus arteriosus or ductus botali. Ductus botali, which connects the systemic arch and pulmonary arch in the embryonic stage. Which connects the systemic arch and pulmonary arch at or in the embryonic stage. In the embryonic stage. That's all about the circulatory system of the human. We can draw the diagram. So this is the ligamentum arteriosum. Ligamentum arteriosum. Superior vena cava. Inferior vena cava. And here it is the apex. aortic arch. And here it is the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery. And here it is left ventricle, and this is the right ventricle. That's all about the structure of the heart.